When you're short in the workplace, you're not just underestimated, you're infantilized. People confuse assertiveness with aggression. They blame you for problems you didn't cause, and the moment you stand up for yourself, you're seen as bitter, angry, or overcompensating. This is my story of what it's like to be a short man in a modern office, where height isn't just appearance, it's rank. Now, in one of my previous videos, I did a deep dive into the reason why I believe luck and success are so deeply connected. And part of the reason I think that way is because I experienced it myself. The work environment that the following story takes place in is a place I found myself in out of pure dumb luck. Not nepotism, not connections, literally just being in the right place at the right time. And by virtue of being a local good old boy. I joined their sales department near the end of 2019, right out of college as an entry-level administrator role. This was an up-and-coming startup, and I had undefined job duties. That being said, I was actually the youngest person in the whole company at 23 years old. So knowing that, it's kind of hard to tell whether this treatment was due to height, age, or both. It probably was a combination. The hazing, the teasing, the disrespect, the misinterpretation, I honestly doubt it would have been as bad as it was if I was tall, even at the same age. Because when you're tall, people just see you as older and more mature. So when I first joined this job, for the first couple weeks, it was just like a training period, and I had to basically train myself because they were constantly going through emergencies and fires to put out, as they would put it. And as a result of me being left unsupervised and with unassigned duties, just some vague training materials, these sales guys were constantly hovering over my shoulders saying,
"Why did we hire this guy? Bro, what are you doing? Do something useful. You're not contributing anything to our team."
And it really hurt because I was just doing what I was asked to do, and there was nothing else I could do at that point. But once I was given an opportunity to prove my worth, I went all in. I pushed myself 200% all the time. I tried to be charismatic and outgoing, introduce myself to people, be friendly, be polite, smile, and to learn everything I could from those who were more experienced than me. And before I was even a month into the job, the first cracks started to show. Instead of appreciating all of my effort to go above and beyond and to prove myself worthy of working in their company, my efforts, of course, were viewed as overcompensating. What initially clued me into this was something that the head of legal compliance said to me, one of the higher-ups, when I was just trying to explain to him or someone around me something that I might be able to do for them to help. He says,
"Okay, you can stop selling yourself now."
And I just looked at him like, what? Selling myself? I wasn't quite familiar with the term selling myself yet at that point. I did look it up later that day, and honestly, I was pretty offended. Because when I spend my first 2 weeks to a month having everyone hover over me, behind me, telling me how worthless and useless I am and how I'm not contributing anything to the team, and then I try and go above and beyond to prove them wrong, it's like I can do nothing right. I can never please them. If I just do what I'm told, I'm not contributing anything. If I go above and beyond to prove myself, oh, I'm selling myself and overcompensating. And you know he wouldn't have said that unless him and the others hadn't been gossiping in the background for weeks at that point. So about a week after that, I got my first performance review. I was expecting praise, 100%, a glowing review. Why? Because I had put my absolute 100% all to try and push myself to do more and more to prove to them that I was worthy of being on their team. I took on extra projects. I helped people around the building with tasks that they needed. I even joined a project group that was working on a company-wide software platform that would bridge the gap between the sales team and the business operations department, an enterprise-wide tracking system, something that I eventually would help bring about by the end of that fall. But what do I see instead of the praise I deserve? Lies, excessive criticism, people that I thought liked me, that I was friendly with, that I helped, that had never brought any of these issues to my attention in person, had gone behind my back to my manager to complain about me, to make me look bad and jeopardize my livelihood. For what reason? I don't understand. I guess they just didn't like me. Because this one girl told an outright, absolute lie, saying that I said something awful and rude to her that I never said, And it was later proven to have never happened. And that girl, she was about 25. She worked in the sales department. She was the only person close to my age in that whole company, and I never trusted her again. So not only did I have outright lies that I had to defend myself from like it was some kind of court case, but this would be the first time that my calm assertiveness would be misinterpreted as aggression. They said to me, people say you need to think more carefully about how you come off. Now, I try not to be a pushover, and I know that if you do let people walk all over you, especially in a professional setting, it's only going to set you up for problems in the future. So I always stand up for myself. I don't raise my voice. I'm always calm but assertive and civil. Now, considering that the first 2 or 3 weeks at that job was full of people hovering over me, telling me how useless I was, and having people constantly accuse me of things I didn't do, and try to redirect my attention to do other tasks when I already had a task assigned by my manager, I had to stand up for myself and say, hey, I already have a task assigned by my manager. Or, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to help you when I'm done doing what I'm doing here. Other than that, I can't think of anything I possibly could have said to come off as aggressive. So I went home and thought about it. Aggressive. Why do people think I'm aggressive? In what situations do people being assertive and standing up for themselves get accused of being aggressive? So I started really thinking about it and looking into it. And I read this article on LinkedIn because I was big into LinkedIn back then. And it was by this woman talking about sexism in the workplace. And she said that one of the biggest expressions of sexism in the workplace is when a woman standing up for herself and being assertive is labeled as aggressive. The reason being that those around them, especially men, expect women to behave in a submissive manner. They expect them to just bend over and take it, for lack of a better term, to talk softly and quietly, to not speak up in meetings, to not have their own ideas, and certainly not to stand up for themselves. And when I read that, it all made sense. What does a woman have in common with me? The average height of a woman is 5'4". My height, just under 5'4". How do people see someone that they look down at? They see them as their inferior. Who's considered the weaker, fairer sex? A woman. Who's considered a weaker, fairer human? A small person. That's when it clicked. This aggressive label had more to do with their perceptions of me being assertive and standing up for myself as a small man than it did with reality. A small man standing up for themselves, being assertive, they're overcompensating. They have short man syndrome. They have a Napoleon complex. They have an inferiority complex. And of course, that's going to reflect in their performance review because they need to calm down, little man. If it was a tall guy being assertive and standing up for themselves, they would get a good performance review. Why? Because if a tall guy was assertive and stood up for himself, they would think, wow, that guy is powerful, he's confident, and he's ambitious.
I'm glad to have a guy like that on our team. He's a natural leader.
Little did I know, that was only the beginning of a 3-month hazing period, where I would just be put through constant trials, teasing, bullying, expectations, and conflicting feedback. Now, you would never bully, exploit, or take advantage of someone who was a threat to you for obvious reasons. But when you've got someone who's smaller, weaker, and lower on the totem pole than you, it makes them an easy target. And obviously, if you're a narcissistic psychopath with no empathy who's willing to step on whoever it takes to get ahead, no matter who you have to hurt to get there, well, then having someone inferior to you to use and exploit, that's like a dream come true. And this company was rife with narcissists. I found myself listening to Dr. Todd Grande on the way to and back from work every single day to try and figure out how to navigate these people. That's how bad it was. So as a result of being the smallest and most low-level male employee at the office, I became the easiest target for exploitation and abuse, having all my efforts and contributions dismissed and not acknowledged, even by people I worked with directly, having others take credit for and benefit from the work that I had done, being blamed for everything, even things that I didn't do, quite often, and being the office scapegoat that everyone can point at and accuse whenever anything goes wrong. And in those rare times that I did make some minor mistakes, they were blown way out of proportion. I mean, these people made mountains out of molehills. It almost felt like they were dead set and determined to try and get me fired. It's like, yeah, let's take him and chew him up, swallow him, digest whatever we can, and shit him back out into the street. This wasn't just a one-off mistreatment. It's a pattern. Every time I pushed back, it confirmed their biases. Have you ever been labeled aggressive just for being assertive? Let me know in the comments, especially if you felt this as a short man or woman. I want to hear your story too. But I wasn't the only victim of height-based prejudice in that office. There was this other short guy. He was in his mid-30s, about 10 years older than me. And he was working in the marketing department, whose desks were literally 5 feet away from me, and I would hear their discussions every single day. And one day, I heard him snap, and after that, I never saw him again. So I was busy, as usual, focused and honed in on whatever task I was doing, while they had their conversation behind me. I hear them laugh, someone make a comment. These people are kind of joking around while discussing their marketing projects, and somebody makes an offhand comment about this guy's height, and everybody laughs. Of course, it seemed like all the rest of them thought it was just a lighthearted joke. But what does this guy do? He stands up, storms off, walks right past me, and screams, "Yes, I get it! I'm fucking short!" And he walks off out the back door, grumbling, saying something else about how he's sorry he's not tall. And I turn around and I look at those guys, and they're just like, if that's how he reacted to that, it makes me wonder how many other things they had said alluding to his height over time that ground him down. Because I don't think someone just snaps like that from 1 or 2 comments, especially in their place of work. But yeah, after that week, I never saw him again. He either got fired or he quit, which is really messed up. Because I felt like his explosion was pretty much justified, although I never would have done anything similar. And it's interesting, I wish I could have talked to him. I wish I could have comforted him, even though he probably wouldn't have responded well to it. I just wanted him to know that he wasn't alone, that I'm a fellow short guy, that I know what it's like, that I know how he feels. But the fact is that I had already gotten over it by that point. In fact, I hadn't just gotten over it, I had embraced it and honestly enjoy the bullying and the teasing. And that gave me a tremendous amount of strength and inner power, which would come into play later on in this story. But yeah, it's very clear to me that he had not come to terms with his height in the same way that I had, even by the age of 35. And that brings us to the most significant event in this story so far, the moment of the bully and the puppy. So there was this one sales guy in particular who would frequently bully, tease, and infantilize me. And of course, he was one of the tallest, if not the tallest guy. Though I will say his face wasn't anywhere near as good looking as mine.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
And contrary to what you might think, I actually didn't mind the teasing and the infantilizing and the bullying anywhere near as much as I minded people criticizing my ability to get things done or blaming me for things I didn't do. In fact, thanks to my masochism, I took pleasure in the bullying. This tall sales guy was the main person I think of when I think of the 3-month hazing period I went through. Now, the reason it stands out is because of this moment with his puppy. So he had this adorable, cute little puppy that he would bring to the office, and it would run around with a jingling little collar, and it would come up to me, and I would pet it. And one day, there weren't many people in the office, and he comes in with his puppy. It's running around on the floor. Everybody's enjoying it. And what does he say? He points to his puppy, and he says to me and everyone,
Chadlet's just like this little puppy here. Tiny, adorable, and new to the world.
Now, comparing another full-grown man to your puppy is one of the most disrespectful and infantilizing things that a person could do. And if I was that other short guy who was 33 years old and snapped earlier, I probably would have had a conniption fit. And if I was another tall guy, he never would have said it. But if he did, he would have expected a fight. But of course, I'm totally non-threatening, just like his little puppy. And just as you might imagine, I did not mind at all. In fact, when he said that, I rolled back in my chair laughing. Oh my God, dude, I am just like that little puppy. Oh my God, that's a perfect comparison. And everybody laughed and looked at each other, and he had this look of awe on his face, like he did not expect me to respond so positively to that teasing. And this one small moment changed my office experience for the rest of the time I was there. Not only did this guy never tease me again, but he showed me more brotherly love than any other man in that company. And he would actually come to my defense later on. And I could tell that he actually truly respected me after that. And of course, just a few months later, we all went to work from home, we went our separate ways, and I only saw those guys 1 or 2 more times in the few times I had to go into the office. And regardless of the physical distance, the disrespect, the scapegoating, the blame game continued. In fact, in many ways, it got worse. Because now, instead of people in other departments disrespecting me and blaming me for every little thing that went wrong, it was people at my same level, on my team, doing everything they could to actively disrespect me, insult me in front of the manager, and destroy my reputation. The way I see it, that's kind of like crabs pulling each other back in the bucket. Because my direct coworkers that were at my level, one of them was a black guy who was only an inch taller than me. The other one was a mixed-race Mexican woman who was about 2 inches taller than me. And my manager was like 2 inches shorter than me and of Middle Eastern descent. But I talked to her about the height bias and height hierarchy thing. And believe it or not, she actually acknowledged it, and she was on my side. It was clear to both of us that there was a definite pattern in who was at the higher level of management in that company and who was at the lowest level. The C-suite executives, the vice presidents, all tall. There was even a woman who was 6'2". She had one of the highest level roles in the company, and she was only 2 years older than my manager. And to be honest, I remember that woman very fondly. She treated me in a very motherly, maternal manner, putting her arm around me.
Hey, Chadlet, how are you doing today? I hope everything is going well for you.
And I just loved being near her. I would go out of my way to talk to her and stand next to her any chance I could, because honestly, I had a massive crush on her. A tall, fit, muscular woman in such a position of power, there's nothing hotter than that. And on top of it, she played basketball in college. But throughout the course of 2020, things would just get worse and worse for me. I'd continue being blamed for everything and making little mistakes that would be blown way out of the proportion. And it got to the point where I was constantly fighting to justify my job. And with the economy taking a downturn and the company having to downsize, I was one of the first on the potential chopping block. And after having higher-ups try to micromanage my social media presence, I just couldn't take it anymore. Everything about that experience is something I never want to deal with again. And when they finally let me go for a COVID layoff and gave me a nice severance package, I was thrilled. I had already told one of the higher-ups a few weeks earlier that I wasn't going to stifle the growth of my personal brand just because he was worried that other people might be influenced. And I really wanted to quit. And I was really happy that I didn't have to quit, because not only did I get the severance package, my resume is still spick and span. Now, a lot of people tell me that that's just a toxic work environment, and most office jobs aren't like that. I was just put into an exceptionally unfortunate situation right out of college, be it one that I learned a tremendous amount from. That said, I don't think I want to take the risk. Why would I want to put myself in a position where my height would be a continuous source of disadvantage, where my potential for growth and consideration for leadership opportunities and pay increases would be potentially hampered by something that I have no control over whatsoever? No, I'm not going to let society dictate what I can achieve in my life. And that is why I reject the corporate world. I'm an entrepreneur now. I'm my own boss. I make my money independently. And if there is one place that you can find opportunities to succeed regardless of your height, it's the internet. Now, if I was ugly, that would be a different story. Your face will always have an impact on your success, whether on or offline. But fortunately, when you're online, it's a lot harder for people to tell how tall you are. That job taught me a lot about power, bias, and how invisible expectations shape the way we treat each other. If you're short, or if you've ever been made to feel less than for the way you look, you're not alone. We all know it makes no sense to have legal discrimination protections for religion, something you choose, and not for something you can't choose, like your height. Just imagine if someone treated racial discrimination like the joke that society treats height discrimination. They'd be canceled in seconds and they'd never work again. So what's up with the double standard? And if you want more stories like this, check out the time I got brutally rejected by the tallest girl in my college.